Hi, I'm Judicial Candidate Michael Strom. Taped with Rabbi Doug is coming up next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. We are here today in Chicago, Illinois with Judicial Candidate Michael Alan Strom. Michael, welcome to the show.
It's a privilege, Rabbi.
You are a longtime Chicagoan, grew up on the South Side,
I did.
South Shore area, and in Rogers Park, in East Rogers Park now, and an attorney with a lot of connections to the Jewish community, as well as to a lot of other, shall we say, community organizations. And you yourself are now running to be a judge. So first of all, the first thing I want to know with judicial candidates, and I think our viewers, because you are, for this upcoming primary, the only judicial candidate we've had on the show, can you tell everyone, when you are running to be a judge, is running to be a judge something that actually, if you win in the primary, you are the judge already? Or do you have to run again in the general election? And are you running against someone in the general election? Or are you just running by your name, getting enough votes? How does it all work? Because I think that people are confused about judicial candidates. We see all these names on a list when we go to vote. We don't know how they got there, and we don't know who they are. So that's why we have you on the show today. Can you tell us?
Sure. For all intents and purposes, if you win the Democratic primary in this area, the 9th Subcircuit, you will be the judge because there hasn't been a Republican candidate on file for about 20 years. But the general election is when judges are actually elected. But it'll be one of a number of uncontested races unless somebody mounts one heck of a write-in campaign. There will be no other candidates other than the winner of the Democratic primary.
Okay, so tell me, when, let's say that you win and you are elected, where will you be assigned and how will you be judging in what type of court, or don't you know that?
It's a good question that a lot of people are confused about. A lot of people presume that since the district is almost centered in Skokie, that the winners of the 9th Subcircuit would be assigned to the Skokie Courthouse. And there are some, but the 3 judges who retired last year...
They were who?
They were Lee Preston, whose vacancy I'm running for.
My dear friend, who I taught his daughter and officiated at her wedding.
Also originally from South Shore. I only found that out a few years ago. Barbara Meyer is another vacancy. And the third is Alan Goldberg. All 3 of those judges, towards the end of their judicial career, were in the Daily Center downtown. As far as what the assignment would be...
And Lee just had his 70th birthday this week. Happy birthday, Lee Preston.
Mazel tov, Lee.
Okay.
As far as the assignment goes, there's a near certainty that every new judge goes through traffic court for a certain period of time in the Daily Center. There is a natural progression to a certain extent. The way things have been, unfortunately, in Cook County the last several years, the one after traffic court is often the mortgage foreclosure court. It's an area of great need for the circuit court. Technically, it's part of the Chancery Division. But this is an area that at one point, not that long ago, there were 2 courtrooms that handled all the mortgage foreclosures. It now takes an entire floor in the Daily Center, and it's not enough.
Wow, that's a big change. Of course, the economy has changed a lot, and that's
It's
what brings
getting
that
better. If we can consider this progress, I understand that the cases pending in foreclosure had been 8,000 as recently as a year or 2 ago, and it's down to 6,000.
Well, it's a little bit better. What makes someone who is a successful lawyer, someone who has a practice well respected? You were president of the Decalogue Society, which I guess would be the Association of Jewish Lawyers in the Chicago area, right? you're well known in the community. You do a lot of good things. There's a list of things which maybe we'll go through in a little while. But what makes you think, I want to become a judge? I don't want to practice law from this angle. I want to practice it from this angle. What makes you want to do that and go that route?
Well, speaking for myself, I've been in private practice for 36 years, and for most of it, well, almost all of it really, I didn't like being rationed in the amount of public service that I could do. And there was a 14-year period where I was working for a corporation, and it was literally 30 hours a year, Michael, and that's it. I've done a great deal of public service work in the community that I grew up in. It's turned into a community of great need on the south side. Almost 30 years as a teacher, coach of the mock trial teams at South Shore High School, and it frustrated me that I couldn't do more. I knew that there was more that needed to be done, and that if I could devote the time to it, I could get more people to help me doing it.
Very nice. So tell me something. In practicing law, reaching this point where you're running to be a judge, is there a type of law that you wanted to practice that you didn't get to practice and you ended up in a certain stream because of the firm you were involved with or anything like that? Is there a type of law that you enjoyed playing with along the way? When you're a lawyer, a lot of times you fall in, well, this is where I got my job and this is where my practice has led me, such as, corporate law or defense, criminal defense. Where did you want to go, and what did you enjoy the most, and where did you end up along the way? And what would you prefer to be judging as a judge? What type of cases? So that's kind of where I'm leading.
Well, what I always wanted to do from when I was maybe 10 years old, when my grandpa Max said, as much as he argues, he ought to be a lawyer, there was a certain resonance there. I always wanted to be in the courtroom arguing cases. I didn't want to be, nothing wrong with it, nice practices, but I didn't want to be drawing up wills or trusts or things that didn't involve the courtroom with people and the hustle and the bustle and the weirdness of humanity between the lawyers, the judges, the jurors, the witnesses. To me, that's my Disneyland. As long as I'm in a court and there are litigants, I'm a happy guy. I found out when the last couple of years, I've worked with my cousin Neil, where there's a different kind of practice area. Sometimes they'd send me into courtrooms where I hadn't practiced because the clients had problems they were experiencing while they're waiting for a workers' compensation settlement or for a check to come through. So I've been in eviction court. I've been in a little bit of criminal practice. I've done work in courtrooms where when they see me coming in, they say, "What are you doing here?" But I've loved all of it. What I've found over the 36 years I've been in practice is most of the things that at first impression I said, I don't want to do that. When I did it, turned out to be fun. So I've grown more open-minded about that. The only thing that I would really recoil at, although who knows, but if I was in a courtroom where it was just lawyers, no litigants, no jurors, no nothing, to me, law comes alive when you can see the people. When you can see the people who are affected by the rulings that you're going to make or the arguments you're going to make as an advocate. Most Cook County courtrooms fit that description. I think that in terms of the contribution I could make to the system, my area of concentration for decades was very complex civil cases with multi-parties, everybody suing everybody, and more claims than you could shake a stick at. To quote Fiddler on the Roof, problems that would cross a rabbi's eyes. Mm-hmm. And to me it was like this amazing jigsaw puzzle where there were all these misshapen pieces, but if you could fit them together, you could get from the start to the finish and achieve justice for your client.
Very nice. Not that it matters, but since I'm Rabbi Doug, and a lot of my viewers are Jewish, a lot of them aren't, but a lot of them are. Tell us what your connection to growing up Jewish in a Jewish community are. Not that it would make a difference in your law practice or in your position as a judge, but I think those who support you would want to know a little bit about your background. If you could tell us, that would be great. Tell us about your growing up on the South Side, and where'd you go to Hebrew school, where'd you have a bar mitzvah, things like that.
Well, I grew up at 80th and Yates. There was a shul a half a block away, a good Azachem with Rabbi Harold P. Smith of blessed memory, a great
Who
scholar.
I knew to his last day, because his last years lived to be over 100 years old. He lived in Buckingham Pavilion on Toohey Avenue, and I would daven with him and see him on a regular basis. Loved the man. And my good friend Glenn Miller, who also grew up in the Agudas Achim, always came to visit him all the time. And he had a number of other Agudas Achim former congregants who knew him, and I knew him and his wife who were living there for many years.
How about that?
Yeah.
Just
Going a few years.
I was, you lose track.
Yeah.
And then when I heard of his death, it was just like,
Yeah.
it's a name that I hadn't heard for so long.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you were able to give him comfort.
Love knowing him. Great man.
So that's where I grew up. I lived there until I went off to college. My parents weren't Orthodox. I think my mother was Reform altogether. But the shul was a half a block away, so that's where you're going. So it was, old school, traditional, the chitza down the middle, guys here, girls there. I think because I don't know how much of it was my Michigas and how much of it was my brother's. I think it was some sort of prank that Rabbi Smith set my bar mitzvah for Christmas Day.
Very nice.
But through just the coincidence of how districts fall, where I lived was really almost the northern edge of the grammar school district, Coles, and almost the southern edge of South Shore High School's district. There were only a handful of people who went to both of those schools. And it was such an incredible difference. The area that I went to elementary school in, back then the steel mills were still up and running. A lot of kids whose folks worked in the steel mills were going to school. There was a fair amount of Jewish presence in Coles. There was a fair amount of, anti-Semitism is really the only way to put it. At age 10, I wasn't really fully equipped to answer the question of, well, why did you kill Jesus? I had an airtight alibi, but that really wasn't what they were going for. One thing that Coles was it was 100% white, whatever brand or breed or religion it was. South Shore, when I got into high school, it was more Jewish, but it was what we euphemistically call a changing neighborhood. It was 25% African American when I came in and 90% when I went out. So
Neighborhood changed?
Entirely while I was in high school, and it was one of those classic 1960s experiences where the kids were fine, but the parents were losing their minds. And one of the reasons that I settled in Rogers Park, first of all, when I learned that there was such a thing on the south side, you don't know about something like Rogers Park, but it was striking how much it looks like my old neighborhood. The style, the vintage of housing, the mix of these beautiful old 3 flats and and old houses.
Single family homes, right?
Yeah, it was very familiar to me. And on the lakefront, just if you could flip the map 180 degrees, it's the same neighborhood. And I know people who grew up in North Side Jewish neighborhoods who wandered into South Shore for one reason or another, and were just taken aback because they recognized that it looked exactly like Rogers Park, but of course the population had changed a bit, so that it was jarring to them. To me, The diversity of South Shore was something that we thrived on. So in terms of my Jewish affiliation beyond that, eventually we settled here. I had children. We went. Actually, my wife was a big help with that. We were members of.
Her mother was very happy too. She married a lawyer.
Go figure. That's another story, but you don't have time for it. We were members of Ezra Habonim on Tui when it existed in Tui before that shul blew up. But that was after.
Which is now the Weizsäcker Cheder, the Yeshiva Or Baruch, a Jewish day school.
It is. Our children were 17 months apart, and the boy was the older, so they were close enough that we had a b'nai mitzvah. My wife's family almost entirely lives in Florida. They emigrated to the Promised Land for our people, Boca, Boynton Beach, and we knew that we had a choice of either having one big mitzvah and an afterthought, or combining them and really having a big one where the whole mishpacha could be here. So that was terrific. And then after the shul split up, these things happen. I eventually went shul shopping. One of my old friends from South Shore has been a longtime member of JRC in Evanston, and
The green shul.
Oh, yeah, it's so green. Platinum, I understand. It's very green. So my good friend Leslie Rosen, who was at South Shore with me, I wasn't aware of it, but she was there. Eventually wound up joining her shul. We've been at JRC for a bit. It's worked out nicely.
Rabbi Rosen.
Rabbi Grant Rosen, who
My wife taught there for years. Taught his son. So tell us about school after South Shore. What did you do after high school?
After high school, I went downstate to the University of Illinois, where I basically had my 4-year timeout until they'd let me into law school. And I was just waiting to get into law school.
Which was?
Turned out to be Boston University. And that's where I met my lovely bride, Sherry.
It was Bashert.
It was.
She
Sherry.
wasn't at Marshall, Kent. She was in Boston.
Well, and she wasn't in law school either, but she was basically fleeing New Jersey before the rest of the family did. She was the first one who said, this is not for me. She went to Boston, was making her own way, and we wound up moving into the same apartment building. We've been married since I graduated law school in 1977, 2 beautiful children. More than this would be greedy to ask for.
Very nice. Very nice. So the one thing you didn't tell me, which I still want to go back to, is what is your ultimate court that you'd like to preside over? For what type of court? Is it family court? Is it financial litigation? Is it I'm sure it's not traffic court, but what would you like to preside over? Do you think would be the ultimate, I guess, thrill-seeking type of judgment? Which means you have to do your work, going into the law books to make a judgment, because it's so complicated that only a good lawyer who is a judge could really delve into it deeply and come out with a real judgment according to the law books.
Well, I'm uniquely suited for what's called law division and the type of larger civil disputes that get into the law division. I've been very comfortable, handling cases worth millions of dollars that get extraordinarily complex. It's an area I think where they could use some more lawyers with that background, although there are some law division who have it. One of the things that you can do in that setting is help resolve some of those cases early, because you have a better understanding of what they are and where they're headed and what it takes to get them resolved. These are cases that, when they go to trial, can take, some of my trials, 4 or 5 weeks to try, which is an awful lot of investment of one courtroom of the taxpayers' money. Not to mention taxing the patience of the 12 in the jurors box who have to listen to that for weeks and weeks, and they're thinking, why will these guys shut up already? So if you, any way you can make those go away quicker, avoid more trials than you need, settle the ones that can be settled, get them as early as you can. Some cases can't be settled, they have to get tried, and it's best to have somebody who knows the roadmap to those kinds of cases.
Fantastic. We are here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I am here with Michael Strom. He is judicial candidate now for the 9th District, correct?
The 9th Subcircuit, the Preston Vacancy.
Right, for the vacancy of Judge Lee Preston, who retired. And we are going to be right back, so stay with us.
I am American.
I am an American.
I'm an American.
I am American.
I am America.
I'm an American.
I am American.
I am an American.
I'm Judge Abner Mikva, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Welcome back. I am here once again with Michael Strom, who's an attorney who's running in the judicial primary here in Illinois, and it's coming up so soon. A couple of things I wanted to ask you, I think, that are important questions, and maybe something that other people would want to know as well is what makes Michael Strom a better candidate than other people running for lawyers? I've run other lawyers running for judges. I do know a couple of people who have run on the Democratic primary before and didn't make it. I kind of don't understand how that works sometimes, but they didn't make it. They were good candidates and people I knew well, and prominent lawyers. What makes you a better candidate than others who are running for judge right now, and makes you someone that people should really turn towards to vote for?
Well, the first thing you should understand, Rabbi, is that no good judicial candidate runs against anybody. You just run positive campaigns about yourself and what makes you best suited for the job. So as far as the other candidates, any involvement I've had in these things, I make nothing but friends. I'm sure that I will have even closer relationships with the 4 other candidates in my race when we're done running this marathon. As for me, there's 2 things. One of them is there is an exceptionally high level of acceptance by the bar associations. I'll have credibility going into the job. Highly qualified from the Chicago Bar, well qualified from the Chicago Council of Lawyers. I've had, really positive ratings for the 10 years I've been pursuing this position one way or another. The other thing is my commitment to public service beyond the courtroom, which I mentioned the South Shore.
So many things. I mean, there's a list. I didn't mention them because I want to hear so many other things from you. But you've been involved in numerous. I just want to hold it up. This whole list here is just a handful of things that you've been involved with. Different associations, different interfaith councils, different universities, speaking in different places, different charities. You've been involved in a lot of things. And this is as a lawyer, and this is volunteer and getting involved in community activism.
Sure. Now the one thing that's more recent than the mock trial stuff that we talked about earlier, which is these are brand new programs now that are being rolled out through what's called the Interfaith Committee at the Chicago Bar Association. I don't know why they don't do any interfaith work, but about a year ago I heard that they were working on a program to intervene in the most truant settings of kids in really difficult neighborhoods, where if you don't get to those kids in 6th, 7th, 8th grade and get them coming back to going to school, they wind up playing for the other team and it's filmed at 10. You don't want to see that. So they were looking at doing a program in Englewood. Doesn't bother me, I'm from just the next neighborhood or 2 south of there. And they wanted 12 lawyers to go in there. And I said, I'll do it. I'll get you the 12 lawyers. Now, I'm not goofy enough to believe that I was going to bring 12 Hebrews into Englewood and say, everything's good now, the Jews are here. I was in a position to reach out as Decalogue president to a whole bunch of other bar associations that I thought would be interested, and they were. The Cook County Bar Association, which is, I think they're going into their centennial now. They're the oldest African-American bar association here. The Black Women Lawyers Association, they were thrilled to be asked. It was easier than you would have thought getting together between those three organizations, 12 lawyers to go and work with truant kids in a neighborhood that everybody knows has had problems. We got it together. We finished the program. We learned a lot, and of course, the next thing that happened is they closed that school. So another opportunity came up in Back of the Yards. Again, you know, my South Side Argot is okay, but my Spanish is non-existent. So I reached out to the Hispanic Lawyers Association. Again, they were happy to have the opportunity. A little number of them came from that area of the city on the southwest side. We had half a dozen lawyers from the Hispanic lawyers going into the Chavez School. As fate would have it, the first day they went in to work with these truant kids, that evening was the night where 13 people got shot in a park in Back of the Yards.
Oh, I remember that.
If I had anybody else other than my valued partners from the Hispanic Lawyers Association there, it would have been one and done. You'd have never gotten them back in there. These are the kinds of things that I've been working on that I think they're at least exciting to me, because there are 11 Alliance Bar Associations, different ethnicities, different groupings, and there's something in there for whatever problems we need to address. And I think it's just a matter of putting the bar associations, the volunteer lawyers, and judges together, because judges are involved in every program that I've mentioned. The Interfaith Committee, the co-chair is our Judge Tom Hogan, who's a sitting judge in the Law Division, and retired Judge Sheila Murphy. I have, during the many years I worked with South Shore, brought in a number of judges to give special presentations there, and brought kids from the inner city to the appellate court to watch oral arguments and to get some special attention from appellate court justices. This is the kind of thing where, let's face it, there's no more money for programs. We need volunteers, we need people who can put this together. I can do that better above and beyond court time. It's not instead of a courtroom. But the position in circuit court, I think, would be tremendous value in continuing the types of projects that I've worked on for decades.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Michael Strom, I wish you much success in the primary, in the general election, and maybe next time we have you on, you'll be Judge Michael Strom, and that would be really nice.
I'd love to tell you how it comes out.
All right, and I want to thank all of you for being with us. Remember, if you want to check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can also see former shows on the web. Or if you want to email us, or email Michael, and I will forward the email to him, and I know he'll get back to you. The email address, info@tvrabbi.com. Hope to see you next time, right here on Tape with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone, and good luck and success to Michael Strom.
Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show, where he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need, you're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug.
This has been a Tape with Rabbi Doug production.